Did you know that the Australian military once declared war on emus? Or that women couldn't get credit cards without a man's signature until the 1970s? Your history teacher definitely left out some of the wildest chapters from our past. I'm about to blow your mind with 10 historical facts they never taught you in school. And trust me, number 7 will completely change how you think about ancient history. Let's start with one of the strangest military operations ever conducted. In 1932, Australia literally went to war against emus. After World War I, the Australian government gave veterans land for farming in Western Australia. But these farms faced an unexpected enemy. About 20,000 emus migrating inland during breeding season. These massive birds destroyed wheat crops, leaving desperate farmers begging for government help. The military response? Soldiers armed with machine guns. But here's the crazy part. The emus actually won. They evaded the soldiers by breaking into smaller groups and using terrain to their advantage. Despite burning through considerable ammunition, soldiers killed only a fraction of the emu population. The press dubbed it the Emu War, and Australia had to admit defeat against these feathered adversaries. I know what you're thinking. No way that's real. But I promise you this actually happened. And it's just the first of our mind-blowing historical facts. Have you ever heard of the Pastry War? In 1838, France and Mexico went to war over, wait for it, a bakery. When Mexican soldiers allegedly looted a French baker's shop in Mexico, France demanded 600,000 pesos in compensation. When Mexico refused, France sent warships to blockade the Mexican coast, leading to actual military battles with real casualties. Eventually, Mexico agreed to pay up. Imagine going to war over pastries. This ridiculous conflict shows how even minor incidents can spiral into international warfare. But let's talk about something that will completely rewire how you think about history. We tend to imagine ancient Egypt as one continuous civilization, but check this out. Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt, lived closer in time to the invention of the iPhone than to the building of the Great Pyramids. Let that sink in. The pyramids were built around 2560 BCE, while Cleopatra ruled in the 1st century BCE, a gap of about 2,500 years. Meanwhile, from Cleopatra to the iPhone's 2007 debut is just about 2,000 years. Mind-blowing, right? Our sense of historical time can be incredibly misleading. Speaking of misleading history, did you know that the medieval English once knighted a rooster? According to accounts, a 15th century lord believed his rooster had mystical powers and bestowed the title of Sir Goosefoot upon the bird. This feathered knight reportedly enjoyed royal treatment with its own luxury coop and gourmet grain diet. Medieval people had some seriously strange beliefs. Now for something far more serious that absolutely should be in history textbooks. The Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 was one of the worst incidents of racial violence in American history. Yet it was deliberately suppressed for decades. Greenwood, a thriving African-American community in Tulsa known as Black Wall Street, was utterly destroyed by white mobs over an 18-hour period. Up to 300 people were killed, 800 injured, and thousands left homeless as businesses and homes were systematically burned. Why isn't this taught in schools? Because the media and local authorities actively work to bury this history. Only in recent years has this horrific event begun to receive proper acknowledgement. If you're finding this informative, hit that like button right now. It really helps the algorithm show this video to more people who need to learn this hidden history. Jumping ahead to something that affected how nations are governed. Between 1649 and 1660, England had no monarch at all. This period, called the Interregnum, came after the English Civil War when King Charles I was captured, tried for treason, and executed. England became a republic governed by Parliament and later by Oliver Cromwell as Lord Protector. This radical experiment challenged the divine right of kings, the idea that monarchs were appointed by God. Although the monarchy was eventually restored with Charles II, this period fundamentally changed England's political landscape forever. Did you know that from roughly 1300 to 1850, the world experienced what scientists call the Little Ice Age? This global cooling period brought longer, colder winters and cooler summers across much of the world. Rivers and seas froze, crops failed, famines struck, and populations declined in many regions. This climate shift even contributed to the collapse of certain civilizations, like Norse colonies in Greenland. What's particularly fascinating is recent research suggesting this cooling period may have been triggered by an unusually warm period that disrupted ocean currents. Climate has always shaped human history far more than we realize. Here's something your history teacher definitely skipped. After the Russian Revolution, a force of allied nations including Britain, France, the United States, Japan, and Canada actually invaded Russia. This little-known intervention during the Russian Civil War, 1918 to 1920, had multiple aims, including reopening the Eastern Front against Germany during World War I and preventing the spread of communism. However, the effort was poorly coordinated and ultimately unsuccessful, leading to the consolidation of Bolshevik power. The Soviets effectively used this foreign intervention in their propaganda, portraying themselves as defenders against foreign aggression. Now for something that affected half the population but is rarely discussed. Until 1974, American women couldn't get credit cards in their own names. Banks routinely required single, widowed, or divorced women to have a male co-signer for any credit application, regardless of their income. Even when women did get credit, banks often valued their income at only 50% when determining credit limits. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act finally changed this in 1974, allowing women financial independence for the first time. The first women's bank opened in New York City the following year. It's shocking to think this financial discrimination existed in our parents' or grandparents' lifetimes. And finally, the most disturbing fact on our list. During Prohibition in the United States, 1920 to 1933, the federal government deliberately poisoned industrial alcohol to deter illegal drinking. They mandated that manufacturers add toxic chemicals like kerosene, iodine, and chloroform to make industrial alcohol undrinkable. In 1927, they even increased the methyl alcohol content to 10%, knowing it could be deadly. The result? An estimated 10,000 Americans died from this government-sanctioned poisoning program. This dark chapter reveals how far authorities were willing to go to enforce prohibition. These hidden historical facts show that our past is far more complex, bizarre, and often darker than what we learn in school. History isn't just about memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding the full, messy story of humanity. If you've made it this far, you clearly love learning the history they don't teach in school. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into hidden history. Leave a comment telling me which of these facts surprised you the most, and check out our other videos exploring the strangest chapters from our collective past. Until next time, keep questioning what you think you know about history.